So Jubilee put out this video called "Is Pride Necessary? Conservative versus Liberal Gays" on their show Middle Ground. And today we're just gonna kind of be, reacting to it, just see what it is about. I haven't watched this beforehand, so I have no idea what actually is going to be discussed. So the first prompt is the gay community is over sexualized, but this guy, like, in the suit, in like the blue suit jacket, doesn't really peg me that much as a gay conservative. And on this side, maybe actually it's kind of like they mirror each other. Like this guy right here in the gray shirt, and this guy over here in like the blue jacket feels like they should like switch places. Just based on looks, at least.
Can the agreeers please step forward?
So all the gay conservative stuff
forward. It's based off of our sexual attraction. It has a very easy time going into a space that's all about sex. To me, being gay is a lot more than who I sleep with,
But that's pretty funny if you're a conservative, because that's what the right think about when they think of LGBTQ plus people. Like they think it's all about sexual stuff. That's why there's the whole trans people are groomers thing. If people if teachers talk about LGBTQ stuff in the classroom, they consider that grooming, and that includes the gay people. So already we're kind of at a iffy point. You say you're a gay conservative, and you do agree that the gay community is over sexualized, but I wonder if he's gonna come out the point oh, my side tends to over sexualize it, even though I'm still conservative.
One of the biggest challenges when I was coming out to my dad, who's Muslim, it was my sexuality, being gay, isn't just about my sexual lust for other men. It's more about the spiritual connections, the in-depth things. Me as a whole complex person, I do think that our experiences and our existence has kind of been trivialized by the over-sexualizations. I don't think it's inherently an evil.
And the over-sexualization is apparent in the apps that we can get. I mean, you can literally have sex on demand, or you could find it in a location wherever you want. Certain businesses are actually keeping doors open because men are having sexual relations in the bathrooms, and that's inappropriate. I mean, we want our privacy too, just like women, and now we can't even have our privacy because a small sect of men ruin it for us.
Yeah, and that was really frustrating too. When I came out the closet, it was I had this innate pressure, I have to download Grindr, I have to be super sexualized, and that's really bad on our youth because although everyone has sex, I get that, but why is it that our community...
Alright, so I'm pan, so I'm not gay. In a way I am. I've had experiences with guys that very much go straight out of the gate, they are overly sexual. Now that has nothing to do with them being gay. If anything, that has to do with them being guys. Trust me. And he was super sexual, trying to be super sexual right out of the gate, and I was just not having any of it. And I had to block him, and he still tried to find me on other social media platforms. So yeah, is there a thing? So yeah, there are gay people, gay men, who can be very overly sexual, and I do think that kind of ruins the experience a little bit. But I don't think that's a uniquely gay community thing. I think that it's just just being a guy. That's kind of just a problem of being a guy, because there's plenty of women who would have similar experiences to me, someone who was just very sexual right out of the gate, so much to the fact that they had to block them and they still tried to go after them.
I think it's easy to generalize our community as over-sexualized because we're in it, so we're focused on it. But if you look at the straight community, I think they're doing a lot of what we're doing, especially now with more sexual liberation becoming a thing for them and their community. I also think that we have to remember, we've only been legal, as in decriminalized in our sex for 20 years this year. That's crazy. Every year up until 20 years ago, there's going to be an explosion of people wanting to embrace their sexual liberation. And then you look at things like the AIDS epidemic in the 80s, that took away so many people and it made us afraid to have sex. So this, in my opinion, is a way for us to overcome stuff, and we definitely need to find a balance.
The basis for...
Yeah, that was a very good point. Like I said before, with my experience of the guy who was being very over-sexual, I don't see that as him being gay. I see that as him being a guy. And you can definitely have bad experiences with someone who is trying to be overly sexual. And they talked about the gay bars that can just happen at bars with like women, like being grabbed by dudes, or even sometimes dudes being grabbed by women, or even other dudes, or sometimes women can get like sexually harassed by other women. Like it's not an exclusive thing from like the gay community. Like it's just people being weird.
Making us illegal has always been based on sex. Right. And so being openly sexual in any way at all whatsoever is inherently a protest, inherently subversive. I mean, there are sexual things that happen in public that I'm sometimes uncomfortable with, but that doesn't mean that all the things we see and all the things our friends see represent the majority of experiences. A huge portion of LGBTQ people exist in zero public LGBTQ spaces.
I think you draw the line of, you do this in the comfort of your home and you can show affection in public. I don't know if we need to be like indecent in public. I don't know if that would be considered.
How do you define indecent?
I'm in
Like
a
when
20-year relationship, a 20-year monogamous relationship with my husband. And I say husband even though we're not married, but we're not groping each other in public. We can peck, we joke around. When we walk into
Yeah, but that's not what like all gay guys do.
a room, they know we're together because
hold hands?
we give. Yes, absolutely. We show extra affection at home in the privacy of our home or in the privacy of friends' homes because we feel comfortable in that.
And you know what that though is your specific preference for public affection. There are a million rom-coms out there for with heterosexual people, and a funny thing seen in that movie
Correct.
is straight people having sex in some public space.
Correct.
This is a.
I still don't think that's appropriate.
I don't
Straight
necessarily do
people, gay
either.
people
I
having
don't
sex in a
necessarily
public
do either.
space
I'm
is
just
not
saying we're
appropriate.
talking about personal preferences.
I know, but I think a lot of times in this, and I don't disagree with what you guys said, but a lot of times what I'll hear is like, well, the straight people do this, and I always grew up saying, I clean my house before I tell somebody else to clean theirs. I am not straight. Right. Therefore, if straight people are doing something wrong and gay people are doing something wrong, I'm going to address the gay people that are doing something
But
wrong
shouldn't
and
we be
not
addressing
point the
like the
finger.
people who have been setting the stage for all of us to like follow suit with? You know, like we live in a heteronormative culture. Like everything that we see is based off of the way that they exist.
The whole idea of over-sexualization and things like that, I think the danger in it is that for so long it's been weaponized against us, so we're always kind of like under this magnifying glass of like, oh, well, can I hold hands, can I kiss this person? And then, you know, I don't think we necessarily have to like mimic quote-unquote bad behavior simply because that was what was served to us.
Yeah, I think that was a pretty like good discussion. Like I do think like they covered the grounds of like what over-sexualization is in the gay community. And like yeah, like even the conservatives have some good points, like you don't need to be grabbing each other like in public, but like again, that's not a specific gay community issue. Like I don't think that's a like specific community issue. Like that's just like preferences with like how to show your love in a relationship, and also just kind of human decency in public from everyone, regardless of like who you're attracted to.
Pride is still necessary.
Ooh, the conservatives didn't budge. Oh no.
Yeah,
What's
I
the
think
mood?
Pride's necessary, but we need a PR revamp. Yeah, I think we need a rebrand. I take a lot of issues with what I see at Pride parades now, just because, you know, as we discussed previously, I think that it's a little bit over-sexualized. We're celebrating essentially sex rather than love, and we have people running around riding bikes with their balls out in front of kids. And for me,
Where are you seeing this?
Yeah,
what
I'm
prides
curious
are you
about that
going
too.
to?
New York City and Seattle, both of those had naked people walking the streets.
Walking.
That might be a problem with something else. I wouldn't exactly say that would probably be a problem with Pride. I think that's just kind of a problem with like, I don't know, with like people's choices. I don't think that's really, like if that was really happening in like a big bad way, it would definitely be getting dragged out to hell. Like let's be honest.
Being visible, period, is vital.
Absolutely.
We can be
none of
visible
us
without
will.
being sexual.
None of us will be alive to see the day when heterosexual people and homosexual people have equal agency in what's allowed and what's not allowed in the public space.
Me personally, I actually think Pride is very necessary. I love it. I wouldn't say Pride parades. I feel like you guys are leaning towards like the parades itself. Pride is like liberation, you know.
Just proud of who you are and loving
Yes,
yourself,
and
accepting yourself.
Yeah, accepting yourself and having the people around you in your circle really accept you. It really tells the future generation, like, not only is it okay, but look how far we've come. At 2011, you know, the Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy was abolished. I'm in the military, and had that not been abolished, I would not be able to be, you know, a minority, be openly gay, and still be able to serve my country.
Yeah, and I want to just say thank you for your service before I move on. And that's a prime example of the Pride that I would love to attend, is someone who highlights service members, gay CEOs, people who are successful, who are contributing to society. Celebrate who you are.
Ooh, okay, that. Okay, that was weird. And again, like, I wouldn't be surprised from someone who is a conservative, and I think that's the way we should be looking at this too. Like, he is a gay conservative. He's also talking a lot more than them, so I feel like he's gonna be like a large part of this video. But like, just the fact that like, oh, people who serve, like, first of all, CEOs offer almost nothing. And it's just, again, it's just like a thing with the right where they think CEOs, and even some liberals definitely, think that CEOs are like these big people who deserve love and contribute stuff to society. They don't contribute anything to society, alright? They're just doing it for self-gain. That's all that matters to them. It's just profit. But like, it is putting this whole thing into a place where it's just like, there are people who don't matter. There are people who are expendable. And like, when we're talking about pride, being like, we should have something that celebrates pride military, like pride soldiers or pride veterans and pride CEOs. Alright, I gotta ask, like, you put up these like big things like soldiers and veterans and CEOs, are you gonna do like a gay customer service worker? Like, why not just stick with like how pride is now instead of trying to like specify it and like label these other people, like, I guess these other people who attend pride events who aren't these things, like, just unnecessary people who contribute nothing apparently. And I hate this, and it's a big part in both sides too, because there are liberals who find people expendable. Let's be honest. There's people on the left who are just like, especially against homeless people too, like, oh, these people are just expendable, they contribute nothing to society, without looking into the situation itself. Like, why are these people homeless and shit like that? Like, you can't just brush off a bunch of people because you don't think they contribute anything. They're still people. You should still care about them. Like, geez, that just fucking gets me.
But the pride is no longer about being overly promiscuous because we're not allowed to. We don't need to overcorrect to the point that we start to get backlash. We need to correct our PR.
But I still think we're looking at a small group of the people that are at pride.
But the small groups,
like,
but they speak the loud.
It's a vocal minority, man. You think it's a big problem because that's all you're seeing. Like, you're not looking at the bigger picture. Like, yeah, people shouldn't have their genitalia out in front of kids. Obviously. But, like, that doesn't mean that we just, like, discredit pride as a whole. And, again, he agrees that pride is still necessary. He's just saying, like, oh, we need to fix our PR. I wouldn't really say PR is a problem. Like, yeah, are there people who are gay who can be over-sexualized? We already covered this. Yes, that is possible. But that's not a majority of what being gay is. And that's not really what pride is. Like, people who attend pride parades and pride events don't go to them to be like, oh, I'm gonna, like, you know, try to, like, fuck someone, or I'm gonna try to be as, like, sexually free as they want. It's just like, no, let's celebrate. I wanna go there because I want to celebrate who I am. Like, it's just so weird.
No, but they don't always. You said you saw 2 people naked. Like,
and that's the
those
majority,
two
not
separate
a few
instances of groups of people who were naked
Out of
with their
hundreds of
butts
thousands.
out.
Exactly.
Right, exactly.
Around the world. And
but
like
that
you were
gets
saying,
highlighted.
looking at specific things with a
No, it
level
is
of
not.
shame and then have to.
You know what's highlighted at Pride? Just being who you are. Loving yourself because of that and wanting to celebrate it. Because for a long time, for a majority of history, you couldn't. Like, geez.
Look at, like, where are we shameful within ourselves and why is that something that we should be ashamed of in general? Like, why is nudity shameful in general?
I agree with you about nudity itself is not sexual. I don't think so. So I have been to new places. It's not sexual, but when you make it sexual, that's the problem. It can be indecent exposure at some of these things, and pride needs to not be complacent and address.
Yeah, but that's like a problem everywhere you go. Like, that's not a problem like with specifically Pride events. Like, who knows? If you go into a grocery store, maybe someone's just on whip their dick out. Does that mean there's a problem with people who go to grocery stores? No, that's just a problem with that specific person.
It should be interesting.
Like, it's a person problem. It's not a pride problem.
Yes, heels. Come
I
on.
know. I'm alone on this one. But the reason I'm alone on this one is because I organized one of the most successful prides in my community in 2016. I invited groups that were outside the norm, like the NRA and the local GOP, including the Democrats. Because for me, it was important that this event reach the entire community more than just saying we are a sexual being. We wanted to educate the people. I was told I was never allowed to help them again because how dare I invite a hate group like the NRA when all I wanted to do was arm LGBT people and educate.
Probably because the NRA, despite multiple, public shooting, mass shootings, still, fund a lot of people who stop gun reform. Probably because they don't care how many people are murdered. They still just want to make profit. Don't get this hateful group involved in a community that should be based around love. That's insane. There are, pride people who are gay, people who are any sort of minority, are bound to be attacked due to hate crimes. But who's committing the crime? What side would they be on politically? Probably your side. Probably people who are proud NRA members. The answer shouldn't be to arm gay people. It should be to platform gun control and gun reform so we don't have these hateful people armed to the teeth, because they're more likely to be armed than pride people. And the solution to it isn't to fund the people who are allowing this hate to exist. To me, it's so wild to be a gay conservative because you are openly supporting a side that doesn't want you to exist. And I have not gotten into that with this video yet. Now, to me, it's so wild to be a gay conservative because you're openly supporting a party that doesn't want you to exist. Right now they're targeting trans people, but guess what? They were targeting gay people way before then. What do you think they're going to do once trans people are out of their, line of vision?
I dress like this to galas. Big government galas, realtor galas. No one has said anything to me, and in fact, all I get is positive affirmation that, hey.
That doesn't mean they're not hating on you, though. They could obviously be talking behind your back. And yeah, they're probably not going to do it at a gala because they don't want this, very professional, elegant thing because they can't keep their mouth shut. They're probably doing it behind your back. They're still probably more than likely judging you. Just because you're not hearing it doesn't mean it doesn't happen.
Hey, you're living your best life. And I say it's not really necessary because I can walk down my street in heels and braids.
In California.
Yeah, you are so privileged in that way.
Yeah.
In Republican-controlled California, yes.
Yeah, in California, where more than likely, even in that area, they're still going to be exposed to a lot of stuff outside of that. So that would make them more okay. Oh, that's fine. I could go to, a town over and probably still see that. But, in a lot of red states, where it's not like California, yeah, you're talking about a red area, but in a blue state. In a mostly blue state. But, in a red state, that's just not going to fly. It's a lot more dangerous. Yeah, you get the privilege of living in California, where that's more accepted, even by Republicans who stay there. But, in very big red states, or really heavy red states, that's just not going to slide. Yeah, you have a privilege.
Californians found that 35% of Californians feel that homosexuality should be discouraged.
I've done this in Michigan.
You're in LA
I've done this in Michigan. I've done this in Tennessee. I've done this in Missouri.
And you
I've
walk
done
around
this
like this in all those states?
Yes, I have. Yes, I have. And I have had absolutely no issues. I walked
That doesn't mean they're still not going to judge you.
into a backwoods bar in the middle of Nashville where it was a double wide that had been converted to a bar, and it was one of those record scratch.
What does your husband look like?
My husband is 6'4" and he's
And there's your
a man.
protection.
That's not my protection. I
bullshit.
walk in that community.
Yeah, it is protection. Seeing a 6'4" dude, they're not going to try anything if they have protection. If they see this really big guy, they're probably not going to try to do much.
Dressed just like this in these heels, and not only do I not get hate, my husband gets more business.
I'm so happy for you that this is true for you. I really am.
Yeah, totally.
But the reality is that you represent a small minority of LGBTQ people and how they actually experience life in America.
To your sense of freedom, which is so admirable, I think that those things are built on blocks of people who probably did feel that pride was necessary. So it's a beautiful thing that we can have the freedom to,
change our mind.
admire that.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah, he lives in a very privileged way, and because he has a few good experiences, that doesn't mean that pride just suddenly becomes unnecessary. That just means that you have been very privileged in your experiences as a gay man. But if I was just some random gay dude in a very red state in a very small town, and I didn't have the 6'4" guy next to me, nor did I see him. I don't know. Like, I feel like with his look, he definitely comes off as a sort of more elegant person. Like, he comes off very, like, distinguished, so they're probably not going to do anything with him, because they're like, oh, like, he's very well-mannered, by the looks of it. But if it was just a normal dude, like, probably would get harassed more in that same, like, area, without, like, this 6'4" dude there. Like, you definitely live with a privileged life that blinds you from this issue.
And I think we all want everyone to feel the way that you feel, like you don't need it, but that's just not the case.
My name is Sean, and I am a Patreon member who is asked to read you this next prompt. The LGB should be separated from the TQIA+.
Ooh, okay. One liberal dude.
Saying they should be separated is not saying that one
Never mind,
is,
too.
you know, less important.
Yeah, I agree.
So I do want to start with that. But I do think that the LGB is very specific, rooted in science. It's very clear as day. You have lesbian, gay, and bi. Main difference between male and female, we all know what that is.
The reason why I stepped forward with hesitation was because I think that there are such lived differences in experiences that we experience. Although collectively, I think that we all know the collective experience of being a sexual deviant. There just is a difference in lived experience that I think is important to talk about and acknowledge, and that's my grounds for agreeing with perhaps a separation.
Mine is very different. To be clear, the science is very solid on identities other than gender assigned at birth being valid. Science is very clear, robust, there is no question that it's legit. We, as cisgender people, do a really bad job of standing up for people who aren't cisgender. I call out the fact that cisgender queer people are treated differently than non-cisgender queer people, and until we do better, we don't deserve to have the letters be together.
Much better grounds.
So, I mean,
I think that's still a very weird reason, because you're all getting screwed.
I agree with what you're saying, but I think in general this conversation can become very hostile because it seems like, you know, I'm like, oh, I don't want you to be a part, like I don't want you to be my friend, I don't want to be with you, be next to you, be seen with you, and that's not the case. One is an identity and one is a sexuality. And that's just the simple difference between the two. And it's not that we can't support the TQ+.
Right.
I just think that they're two vastly different things.
I think that you oversimplify identity versus sexuality, though, because there are tons of men who identify as straight who have, on occasion, with regularity, once in their life, sex with men, which is why...
They're bi. I think once with men, sure, experimenting, but I think if there is a guy that's identifying as straight that sometimes dabbles with men...
He might identify as straight, but he's not.
You're bi.
So two things. First of all, there are lots of gay men that we are allowed, that we can call gay all day and all night that occasionally have sex with women, and we don't question whether or not they're gay.
They're bi.
But are you entitled to titling someone else?
Yeah, that, again, as someone who is pan, just because I am attracted to other people doesn't mean I'm not going to feel the stigma of being someone who is attracted to males. Like, again, that plays a big part in it. Like, I think cutting people off in that regard, and I think this is probably the only time I can really be, like, connected with this, is that, yeah, I'm going to feel I'm going to feel off when a gay man tells me that my attraction to guys doesn't matter that much or shouldn't be considered, like, in consideration when we're talking about the gay community, just because I am attracted to other people. Like, I'm still attracted to dudes. We share common, like, likeness with that. And we're going to share similar experiences. It's just that experience that we won't share is my attraction to other people. But when it comes to, like, men on men, it's still going to be very similar.
The title is an objective fact. If you sleep with men and women, then you are bi.
What if someone that you were
I don't care
talking
what
about
you
doesn't
feel.
agree?
Yeah.
If you don't
That
agree,
doesn't
that's
make
fine.
sense.
But the fact is, you sleep with men and women, so you're bi.
Flat out.
Can we not talk about who we're having sex with? Just for this problem.
Because a lot of what's in the media today is sensationalized content about, you know, targeting children. A lot of it is valid, and some of it is not. But a lot of times, it's gay men that are doing it, and trans people are getting blamed for it when it's really gay men in drag.
Right.
And because the letters are together, people don't know the difference.
Okay, yeah,
And
that's right.
even when
I was going to
first
say
started,
that, like, I was surprised that this video hasn't turned into, like, oh, trans people are groomers, which is a very much right-wing talking point, at least when it comes to these two. But, like, yeah, you kind of got that going on right now. And by the way, that's not a majority. That isn't even a lot, honestly. Like, it's probably like most guys, like most men who take like sexual advantage of like people of all, you know, race and sizes, they don't really care enough to pretend. They don't. Like, they don't care enough to dress up and pretend to be something else. They'll just do it because they're monsters. They don't care. Like, I don't get this obsessive thing. And this is not just with him, but this is people with the right, where they think, like, these people are going to be elaborate with what they do in terms of, like, SA. Like, they're not. They don't care enough to dress up. They're just gonna do it. There is something that I do have when it comes to, like, a problem I do have when it comes to, like, there's a difference between sexuality and identity. Like, that's what, at least what his argument is. Like, the LGB is technically, like, sexuality, while the, you know, TQIA plus is, like, identity. Wouldn't you say your sexuality does play into your identity a bit? Like, if you identify as a gay person, that's still identity. Like, sexual preference is still a part of your identity. And it's still something that people are going to look at you and base you upon. So I can kind of see it in a way, but I'm not on board. It's still very weird.
I
What's up
think
with
it
these
was an
city
incredible
arrangements?
service to the transgender community who gave us a lot of the beginning for us to fight
like
for
they
our
were playing
rights,
musical
a
chairs.
separation from them, now that we have our rights. That's just so privileged of us, like Marsha P. Johnson threw that first brick at Stonewall, and because of her...
She didn't throw the first brick.
Or the second, or
She
the
got there
third.
at 2 a.m., first of all, and second of all, Marsha P. Johnson was also a gay man, so when she was fighting for those rights, she was fighting for gay rights because she was gay.
Was she a
I
gay
totally
man because
agree.
of the time that it was?
She
I
didn't.
don't
She didn't
know, but she
transition
was
until
gay.
long
She-
after Stonewall actually happened.
I don't-
But that's neither here nor
I don't-
there.
well-
We're here to defend. I'm here to defend the TQ being part of the LGB. Yes, there are some gay men that will overlook what's underneath the belt. That happens. But to say that you have to like them, that's wrong. And I also have a heart for the Q, because we can't clearly define the Q. When I was young, it was questioning. Now it's queer. Queer was a slur once upon a time. But I look at those people who were former homosexuals who now live a heterosexual lifestyle. They're never going to be accepted by the straight community, and they're not going to be accepted by our community. So I've put them under the Q umbrella. Those straight people who do have sex with the same gender on occasion, they would fall under that Q. They may not fall under the B. So I have a heart
and
for
that's the
them
thing, like-
because they do.
With the Q, like the people who occasionally have sex with, you know, the same gender or like, you know, stuff like that. That, you know what the average person who isn't a part of this community is gonna think when they hear about that stuff or like learn about it? Oh, that means he's gay, right? Oh, like he's secretly gay. Like he's still gonna be put on the umbrella of you by like an average person. And maybe there are going to be people who, like, the average person will understand, but I'm talking about, like, people who only really, like, they don't really understand what Q is. Because, again, even when you're in the community, Q is kind of, like, you know, it's not a set-in-stone thing. Like, it's very complicated.
We just can't put them on a pedestal above any of us because we are all in this together.
I also don't think that they should be divorced because I'm a huge disability advocate.
Together.
I have a mental health condition. It's very different from someone who uses a wheelchair. We still have a disability.
What you're getting at is that we're a minority.
Thank
They're a
you.
minority. And the more that you take apart those minorities, the harder it is for us to fight for our rights.
The queer
Because
community
there
is
shouldn't
the
be
queer community is already
diversity between
divided.
minorities.
Since the queer community is already divided, I think separating the two is going to make them even more divided and a lot more animosity between queer and T with LGBT.
It's a double-edged sword because in one way it's like, okay, well, we don't want to divide too much because we don't want to lose our united front against heteronormativity or whatever. But then at the same time, if we can't teach the nuances of our various identities to a heteronormative society, then it's like, okay, well, aren't you gay, aren't you trans? Like, it's all the same thing to them. So I think it's a balance between being all awash and then also noting that we are uniquely made up of all these different
Absolutely.
different experiences. And
But I think if we had a
all agree
stronger
here that
community,
they all
like
matter.
that wouldn't be the case. I'm sorry.
No, you're good.
Like, if you don't like me because who I am, I know that my brother right here or my sister right there is gonna like me and they're gonna support me, and that's all I need because it's all about my personal experience and what's in my circle. You don't need to be in my circle, but because it's within my own circle that I'm getting all this, belittlement and hatred. Everyone just wants to be accepted. Honestly, like that's the way it's looked at.
And can't we all?
And that's a good point. Again, like, you're all getting screwed together, so why not help each other out instead of trying to separate yourselves from one another? Just because you might not agree on certain things. Like, you're infighting when you should be outward fighting.
We can
Yeah.
still be a community while having a better way of explaining what the differences are between the letters. Because, I mean, even in our
Yeah,
conversation
but you can
today, guys-
explain that by not separating. Like, you don't have to separate in order to explain what's going on.
are talking about a lot of anti-LGBTQ legislation, and as if I was a gay person watching, I would think, oh my gosh, like they're coming for my rights, they're coming for my rights. But a lot of times that legislation has to do with the TQ+. And I'm not saying I agree with it. We don't need to go into the legislation. All I'm saying is that the narrative that gay men are being attacked when other letters are, not giving any merit to the attacks, it is confusing and it's harmful to young gay men and their success because they're force-fed this narrative that they can't.
That's totally fair, but there's been over 560 legislation bills put into some sort of vote, right? And over 220 of those have been for transgender. That leaves around 300 plus, not just at the TQ.
I think that there's a lot of nuance when it comes to the laws that we have to talk about. But either way, when you say over 500 LGBTQ plus,
yeah, but the attacks against the T, those are still going towards you, too. Like you're, again, I said this before, if the right get what they want and get rid of the T's, who do you think they're going to go after next? It's going to be you.
The distinction between the two.
Like, your success isn't going to be hampered because of someone else's laws, only in the sense of once those laws pass, if they pass, because more than likely they won't, they're more than likely going to make laws that affect you. Again, you're only finding success right now because you're not their target yet. It's just trying to separate yourself from someone who's being attacked just because you don't want to feel the ramifications, even though if they get what they want, you will.
I passed one of those laws in Nebraska that protects children under the age of 18 from receiving gender-affirming care and hormones. Because I've seen.
And you're proud of that.
Yes, I am very proud of that.
I am so ashamed of you.
Because I have friends who had their first experience with affirming care.
Oh no. Oh god. He came out right wing with that. He was just like, I support this. And I was like, alright, if you have a problem with that, then do you have a problem with, I don't know, someone who's not, an adult, like a minor, coming out as gay? Because again, if you believe that, because I believe he did, jump in when he said that LGBT people are over-sexualized. I think it was a majority of them. If you don't think that your community, if you believe that your community is overly sexualized, and you don't want that, it seems, I don't understand it. I really don't. Because, do you not think that the people that you support don't view minors who come out as gay as, the same thing? They still consider that grooming? They don't care. They don't care if it's just a trans person. They care in general, even though it's not happening. If you don't believe that, people should see gay, the gay community as, this inherently sexual thing, because it's not, then why are you doing this thing that supports the notion that the trans community is openly a sexual thing? So fucking weird. And it's what I said beforehand, that I feel like being gay and being a conservative it's very, it clashes with itself. Because now you're hurting another community by supporting a community who's going to do the same thing to you.
Can I finish?
And
Can I finish?
We're sitting here
But
with
can I
because
finish?
of the stuff you felt as a child.
I'm sure a lot of us
is so
disagree with
sad.
him, but let him finish because we both have things
We can
to say.
all talk, but let's let.
Because when I
finish.
passed this legislation
gross.
that you say targets LGBT people, I sat next to a young girl who her first experience with this type of care was a double mastectomy at 15. She's now 19, doesn't
And
know
how
if she'll be
common
able
is
to.
that?
It's
It's
actually
not.
very common.
It's
because-
not.
common.
It's
I wanna know
literally
how.
not. It's so fucking not. And by the way, when those decisions are made, guess who they're done by? With the approval of the parent and a physician who is certified. It is by choice. And yeah, there have been some people, very little people, who regret it.
You passed a law that affects so many kids from feeling like
Yes, I
themselves.
did.
Transgender
I'm proud
kids.
of my law.
That's unfortunate, and I'm ashamed
If
of
that's
it
what it's
because.
going to take to get you to stop so I can finish my thought, I appreciate
Just
that.
so gross.
All right, you know what? I'm going to shut up until you finish, but I would really like to say something when you're done.
Sure. The person that I testified with, who their experience was a
The
double
one
mastectomy.
person.
Let him
The
finish,
one
let him finish,
person.
let him finish, let him
One
finish.
person.
Let him finish, let him finish.
People talk.
Oh my God.
Okay, that one person was one person in Nebraska, but I know a plethora of
What
other
state do you
people.
live in?
No, you don't.
I know a plethora of other
There's no
people
way.
in other states all over the.
Oh, probably because you're in the right wing. I don't know. Probably because of that. Probably because there are other people who are looking to benefit off of this anti-trans agenda so much that they will hurt their own community. I don't know. Maybe it's that. Maybe it's that. I don't know. That's the only explanation. Because it's not a lot. It's very much not. This is so gross. It's so gross.
Drag shows are too sexual for minors.
No. It's no surprise that literally every single one of the conservatives are joining that when it's not. Are there people who could go too far at drag shows? There are 18 plus drag shows. And there are people who might make it weird. There is that chance. But drag shows in general are not sexual for minors. Or too sexual for minors. They're literally just clowns when you think about it. I saw a tweet earlier, and that's not me joking on trans people either. Yeah, people are being so harshly critical of drag queens, are always so pathetic to watch, because do you realize those queens are they're just clowns. That's it. They're there as a form of entertainment. That is a profession. They dress up that way because they are aware that it is very comical and it is very unnatural to look like that. It is meant to be as a source of entertainment. It's not an identity. They don't just walk around like that. It's just it's their profession. It's the same thing as a clown. You put up a bunch of makeup, you dress up in a very unique way because it draws eyes. And they're doing that because they want to be a form of entertainment, and there is entertainment with that with children. That's why there's drag brunch. Why there's drag reading time. It's not so they can get sexual with kids, it's because they are aware. It's the same thing if someone dressed up as a clown and then had did a reading time. That's it. If you look at a drag queen and can only think of something sexual, you might want to think about yourself and how you view drag queens, man.
I think it's important to not put a blanket statement over everything.
I was just gonna say that.
Because I know already.
But
when
we
they
will
step
put a
forward,
blanket
we're gonna
statement
go with
on
the
those.
Stoutfire example, and then it's
I
going to be
guarantee
like,
it.
oh, well, why is that okay for kids and drag is not? Love a good drag show. I frequent them all the time. Most of them are not appropriate for children. Most
Why?
of them. Not all, but most of them. There are instances that are circulating on social media that represent a small minority of drag shows.
Are you sure that's not just the drag shows you are occurring? Are the drag shows you're occurring 18 plus? I wonder if he's actually going to get into specifics of why the shows that he attends more than likely would not be appropriate for minors. I honestly wonder.
I would date a trans man.
Oh, okay. So equal footing on both sides. I didn't expect that. I thought it was going to be vastly liberal.
Every trans person has their own experience of what trans is. If that trans man still had downstairs, then sure. Because that's the reason I'm gay.
Okay, well then, that's... Alright. It's still positive, but it's a 50-50 positive.
Gay man because I'm a male with male
It's a
body
middle
parts
ground,
that like
as you would
male
put it.
body parts.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
Would that change, let's say if you met someone and you were attracted to them based off of what they looked like in clothes, and then you found out that their genitalia didn't match what you had expected or assumed, would you still not be interested in them?
It would hurt because I would be interested in them. That's happened before. I can't be interested in a person, but at the end of the day, I'm gay. So if I go downstairs and there's nothing there.
But does that... I hope they ask this question. But if just because they don't have it downstairs, does that make them not a man? I want them to know, because that just says a
or
lot.
there is a female body part I can't perform.
So then you wouldn't date a trans man, would you? A trans man is woman transitioning to man.
Oh shit! See, it's so confusing.
Yeah, so it's like you wouldn't, because if they
It's
didn't,
trans man or trans woman,
trans man,
which is
woman transition to man.
Oh,
That's
shit,
why
no,
it's
I would
trans
not.
man.
No.
Okay.
You can turn around if you want.
okay. Yeah, no.
Okay.
So
Wait, what do you...
reset.
I think for myself,
Wait, then what did he think it was? What did he think a trans man was? Like a woman who transitions into a man. What did he inherently think that was? Did he just not understand the question? Like, I don't know how he could just mess that up.
I've never
Yes, it's not a middle ground anymore. At least he's done
had
it.
the opportunity, I would say the privilege. Personally, it is one of those things where like what I look for in a partner is really what they bring to the table in terms of like intellectual conversation and just the way they make me feel. It doesn't really matter what you have going on. If we have good chemistry up here, like that's not going to be a problem at all, and it shouldn't be a problem, and no one should really be conformed or confined to what they have in their pants.
For me personally, I think that love is such a special thing, and to be able to find it in any capacity would be a gift. And I think to close yourself off from possibly meeting someone who you are physically attracted to because of what just is in their pants is really doing yourself a disservice.
Can we go around and say what we love about each other?
I think we all have a sexuality for a reason. That's not discounting the lives of trans people. Like, I think they have the rights. They should be alive. Like, that's totally fine.
Yeah, but okay, this goes back to the whole over-sexualization of gay people. If your sexual like their preference to them is what is in their pants, then I don't know. That seems like a very overly sexual way to like think about that relationship. Now, I don't know if he's like in a relationship or not, but at the same time, like, it's a weird way to come across it. Like, just be like, oh well, like, I don't know, like that person's still a man. Like, it shouldn't matter what's in their pants. If that is a trans man, they are a man. And like, if you have such a problem of that being like, oh well, if they don't have a dick, I don't care, then would you date a trans woman? Even though that is a woman, as long as she had, that going on downstairs, like, would you date her? And would that make you straight? Because that's a woman. If that's all you care about, then you would more than likely be bi. Because there are trans women who still have their old body part.
LGBTQ topics should be taught in school.
But I thought, it's not inherently sexual. So what's the problem with it? I wonder what their opinion of that is.
I'm gonna sit in the middle.
I think age appropriate for sure.
Okay, so you join it. That's good.
Exactly.
It's nuanced. It's age and grade. It depends
So it's literally
on
just that one guy back there, but we'll see.
I mean, there's definitely times growing up when I was in the closet in middle school, I'm like, okay, we're taught men and women, they get together and then they have a baby or whatever, especially like 9th, 10th grade. But like for gay people, something that doesn't exist. We don't
So
like.
I'm wondering what the guy back there, I think his name was Mario, I wonder what he says about this. Because I'll just get my point across this, because this is probably something I'm going to say multiple times in this segment. If you don't think LGBTQ topics should be shared in school because there's a sexual component to it, or if that's what you believe that is the case, then should health class, where they teach sex ed, should that be appropriate in schools? I could definitely see them using that and them saying, and honestly, I could honestly hear them saying no, because that is a right-wing talking point that gets used a lot. Like, oh, we shouldn't teach them sex ed, even though, like, that's stupid. Like, obviously that should happen, because they're gonna do, let's be honest, they're gonna do it. They're teens. We all have been a teenager. We all have been wanting to do it. So unless you're, like, doing abstinence, which isn't gonna work on everyone, having them learn about contraceptives and being safe should be an important talking point to introduce in school, and it should be available for everyone of all sexualities, not just straight people. And also, there's a bunch of LGBTQ topics that can be explored outside of that. It's just, this is going to be very weird, and I feel like, I don't know.
Like women. So
We'll see where
this
they
is my
go.
experience. I'm not reading it in a book. I'm not seeing it anywhere. I'm having to run to the dark corners of the internet. I'm having to experience all these things that they shouldn't just be going through. We should be teaching something at least. But
And it goes back to
age
the
and grade appropriate.
over-sexualization thing. It's like when people say are iffy about gay topics being brought up in school, it's like, oh, the sex. But it's like, no, like, right? Like, why can't we learn about wholesome relationships, or like, you know,
And just the
having good
history behind
credit,
it.
like,
Yeah.
you know.
I'm going to be honest. If none of the liberals mention sex ed and how it only really exists for straight people, I feel like this is a bad talking point.
Making good financial decisions, people of the same, like, just things that are so much bigger.
Well, yeah, and that's why I originally was hesitant to step forward, because there is a fine line. People are talking about the Don't Say Gay bill or the Parental Rights and Education bill in Florida, which was up to grade 3. It's important for kids to know that two
Haven't
people.
they changed that though?
Yes.
Have they changed it since
It
then?
goes up to
Okay, well
12th
then,
grade now.
Either way. Well, when it was originally up to grade 3, that's when I would say I agreed with it, right? Because I don't think that it is the government's place to teach my future child about sexuality. Now, hear me out.
But if you think the gay community, I've already said it. I said it 1,000 times. You don't need me to say it again.
This is why it's a gray area. When teachers open the discussion to young children about sexuality and inherent sexual attraction, it puts them in a position where they could step on the toes of parents. And that's what I don't agree with.
I totally understand where you're going with sexuality. I totally understand what you two said, age appropriate. I think when you're talking about sexuality, that's like sex, that's in terms of like sexual education, sex ed. That's literally what they teach in school. So that
Right,
those
and I'm
types
not
of
for
talks.
that either, which is what the point I was.
And there we go. I mean, they covered 2 points that I mentioned earlier. He brings up sex ed, which I feel like is an immediate, that's an immediate point that should be brought up. But again, because he's conservative, he doesn't think sex ed in general should be around, even though it is a vast positive, as it helps lower the number of teenagers who get pregnant. It helps better communication at an age where these kids, whether you want them to or not, are going to explore this. That's the thing. Again, if you are an adult right now, you have been a teenager before, and you know, regardless of what anyone said to you, you are going to think about it and maybe even explore this, whether it was taught to you or not. So if it's there, you might as well try to teach people how to use it safely and respectfully.
Clarkson kind of made the point that the government really shouldn't be in the business of teaching your children
Well, he's
about
not
their
even- he
sexuality.
doesn't even want to sit
No
down.
one taught us how to be gay. Who taught you how to be gay? Anybody?
The
Was it
internet.
the
But that doesn't mean there shouldn't be a better way to communicate it. Again, it's better off when you... Again, he's a very privileged person. We have already discussed this. It's better to have that conversation with people, especially in environments where that conversation is very taboo, to have that conversation with a respectful adult, with a respectable figure who is able to talk about it responsibly. You live in a very privileged, little bubble in which apparently none of this stuff affects you, and you can't see out of your peripheral vision to see how it affects anyone else.
internet? Okay? It would have. Yeah.
My uncle actually, I didn't know he was gay.
So it was a family member.
Yes, I didn't know he was gay,
for,
but-
for me, as a gay man who grew up with parents who were very, very prudish, they had no idea. They didn't even want to have the conversation. I am that example that should have been taught at school, but I learned. I figured it out on my own, just like many of us.
Literally, he even contradicts himself right there. I should have been. Yeah, you were able to figure it out on your own. But, how were you able to figure it out? Because some people, okay, yeah, you were able to figure it out, and there was apparently no negative repercussions. Or maybe there were, and he'll get to it. But that isn't the same for everyone. You're using your own personal experience and using it as a general consensus, when it's not. You are a very rare case. You are a very privileged person in this scenario.
Ultimately, too. I know as an individual, it would have helped me if someone in my own family, an uncle, a parent, for me, I think it's the government's job to start educating these parents, because the parents need to have these sensitive conversations with their children. The best metric for a child's success is the parental involvement. And what we're doing right now, where we're teaching the children about sexuality and completely not involving the parent, we're leading them down a road for psychological issues because they've got no support system at home. We're creating a school system that's supportive and a home system that they think is unsupportive. We live in 2020.
Are there more supportive families now than there was? Yes. Generally, the common consensus with people is that they're more okay with like LGBTQ plus people. That doesn't mean it's not a generalization though. Okay, if more people are accepting of it, then why do they have a problem with it being taught in school? If they're perfectly fine with it, then what's the problem with that being taught in school? Again, it's just so... God. Well, okay, also here's a good counting point. If most people know how to add, if most parents know how to add and subtract, then why do we teach math? If most family members can, like most parents can read, why do we have English class? Like,
Parents.
How do you get parents involved when they don't support it though? Like I have a lot of really good friends who are educators and they want the parents involved, but a lot of their parents are coming to school already queerphobic.
Right. See, and that's the challenge. That's the challenge for the schools. It's not the school's job to overstep that unsupportive parent and then shelter that child, because now that child...
but isn't that just dude? You're not caring about the child. You literally don't. You don't care about that child then.
Has created a two-world system where I feel safe here, but I don't feel safe at home, and then the state comes and takes the children, which is happening.
How do you feel about waivers?
No, that's not what happens, by the way. They just stay in that unsupportive guideline. Like, it's so fucking dumb.
Like, how do you feel about schools saying, oh, we're going to teach your kid this, and the kid comes home with a waiver? Like, if they sign it, then you're okay with the school teaching it. But if the parent doesn't sign it, then they go in another room, and the parent teaches it.
Yeah,
Are you
absolutely.
cool with something like that?
I would completely agree with that. Yeah.
But that doesn't solve the fact that the child's not getting the support they need for wanting to be themselves.
Just keep thinking about it as you say that is, I have a friend who had a great life at home until his parents found out he was gay. And then they shut him out. They kicked him out of the house. They still haven't spoken to him. He's in his late 20s now. And he was unable to get in-state tuition in college because they would not help him fill out the FAFSA, which requires him to have their tax information. And so would it be great to live in a world where, A, it's possible to reach all parents and educate them and change them from being bigoted? Great. Would it be great to be in a place where that is doable? Awesome. But, you know, I was groomed by a teacher, and it was only possible because it was not okay for teachers to talk about being gay, except the one teacher who went out of his way to make his room a safe space. And because he was the only teacher and happened also, separately from being open, to be a pedophile, he was able to groom myself and others. And so unless and until kids feel like they can be completely safe wherever they are, and knowing that changing parents is kind of an impossible lift, to be frank, not making it mandatory to create safe spaces for LGBTQ kids in schools is begging for disappointment, begging for failure. And to your point about learning about being gay, the ways that I learned about being gay, especially from the internet, I'm almost 40, there's baggage from that I still carry with me.
100%.
And so if I had been comprehensively educated,
making a space, like making a system where there needs to be safe spaces that like children need to rely on, if that's how they, if that's what their identity is, it leads to a better chance of there being this toxic part, whether it's grooming or whether it's turning to alternative needs that are going to affect them. Like,
when I was a kid,
making it more open,
I would be
allowing it to be more open, more talked about, and safer is going to lead to a better overall experience for everyone involved. It allows, not only does it allow gay people to be more expressive in themselves and be more confident in themselves, it's also going to allow straight people to be exposed to that more and allow them to be comfortable around it. so they can have better experience with gay people.
For me, the easiest thing to look at is like where you have sex education, teen pregnancy goes down, right?
Yes.
Education is power. I think it would be something similar for queer people. Like if we had information about who we can be and how we can exist in all these different ways, it would empower kids in a way that they should be empowered.
I did not expect myself to get this heated during it. I'm gonna be honest, I think, like, there was just some stuff in there where I was just like, I'm gonna lose my shit over this. Oh god, we've been recording this for like 2 hours. This was like an hour long, and like this ended up being a 2-hour recording. God. Yeah, that's it. Just, it was a lot more messy than I thought it was gonna be.